With all the fears around AI and what it could do to us and our jobs and Skynet worries, etc., you would think that AI companies would go out of their way to name their AI products something calming and peaceful. But no. In this case, OpenAI decided to name their new multi-agent API Swarm because a swarm of bees sounds peaceful and restful, I guess. I don't know. So the idea behind Swarm is that essentially you can create a team of agents to accomplish a task. I'm going to give you a specific example just so you kind of get a sense. This is not the only one in the space either. So let's say I'm trying to query the weather. So I type into my LLM of choice, hello, what's the weather today? Now, if I'm doing that into an application that uses a Swarm API, what can happen is that the manager agent, which could be an LLM like ChatGPT 4o, interprets the English query and then decides this is a weather request and delegates it to a rules-based agent. So it's not an LLM at that point. It's just deterministic. It just takes inputs and produces outputs like a traditional computer program. And it gives it to the weather agent and says, weather agent, go query the weather for the IP address associated with this laptop. Weather agent reads the IP address on the laptop, goes and queries the local weather using an API and returns probably a JSON file. They then hand the JSON back to the manager and say, hey, here's the JSON. And the manager LLM reads the JSON and reinterprets it into plain English and says the weather outside is 60 degrees and raining. And perhaps it adds something snarky like, you live in Seattle. What did you expect? So when I look at that, that sounds really easy. It's certainly not something that is only available through OpenAI right now, but it signals a strategic shift that OpenAI has been kind of flagging for a few months now. They are not going to be just satisfied with building an LLM. They want to build the operating system for artificial intelligence going forward, and that means building these kinds of approaches that enable an LLM to interact with other aspects of compute to deliver real-time answers to things that users care about. And so this is right in line with that ecosystem play. If you want to build a multi-agent approach right now and don't want to name it Swarm, there are other approaches available. Crew AI is more sophisticated. It's used for things like multi-chatbot conversations right now. So it's not like OpenAI is the only game in town, but the fact that they are choosing to play here suggests that they are continuing to invest in creating the operating system layer on which they want everybody to be building. And so I would expect more APIs to drop. I would expect more functionality for developers. And that, if you're thinking about sort of competition between different big companies, that is a direct shot at Mark Zuckerberg and the play he's making with the LLaMA ecosystem. Mark has invested a lot in making LLaMA really, really easy for developers to work with. And he's been pretty public about that. One of the things he's called out is that at the end of the day, he doesn't need the large language model to be priced to be effective. He can give away the intelligence because he can monetize it in the way he leverages LLMs for his algorithm, personalized content, etc. But what he does need is for people to be developing using his LLM so that the ecosystem for Meta gets richer over time, which in turn adds value to consumers on Meta's platform over time. That's what he needs. And so he needs a living ecosystem for LLaMA long term. And OpenAI is essentially saying the ecosystem is the game and we're going to play too. And so they're going to be working hard to make sure there are more and more tools, more and more simple, get started quick options for developers who want to build in the space. And I would expect that some of the things that we've had to do where we've had to have, RAG approaches, tool chain approaches, etc., you can see with these releases, OpenAI is chipping away at that. Larger context windows chip away at it. Having the Swarm API chips away at it. Fundamentally, they want to bring the process of enabling these LLM agents, enabling this intelligence in your tool chain entirely onto their systems so that they can capture more of that value, so they can be the operating system that the intelligence of the future runs on. We'll see how successful they are. But That's the play, and I think we saw a little signal for it with Swarm. What have you been building with Swarm? Hopefully it's not dystopian. Cheers.